Welcome everyone to the 7 most toxic tanks in World of Tanks Part 2. We've already had a Part 1 where we featured things like the Turan and the Avery and even the Night Stalker. But now we're talking about 7 other most toxic tanks in World of Tanks, and we're mostly sticking to Tier 8 premium tanks. And with each of these tanks, I will also list the counter to them, or the tech tree equivalent, should I say. The tank that you can, well, really compare, and then you'll see, oh yeah, this tank definitely does not have a place, or so on and so forth. And number 1 in the list is obviously the S-fak. Wargaming could not figure out the double barrel mechanics here on console. Basically, these guns reload independently. So if you fire one, the other one doesn't have to restart the reload like on PC. That's a balancing mechanic. And you also have to charge up your shot. You have to hold down the trigger for about a second and a half before both shots come out if you decide to shoot both. Here, it's not that. It's instant. And whenever you fire one gun, the other gun is still loading. So you have 2 guns loading independently of each other, meaning you have thousands of DPM. Unbelievable DPM. You have like 2.5 thousand on each of these guns, and so if you time your shots just right, you can be firing off a 390 alpha damage shot every 5 seconds. It's disgusting what you can do with the S-fak, or you can do what I do, which is a lot of double tapping, which is also pretty crazy. You're basically a tier 10. If they gave this tank more hit points and said it's tier 10, I would not bat an eye. That seems fair to me. It works great at tier 10. And in fact, I don't like being in my tier 8 games. I prefer tier 10 games. And so now, let's talk real quick about the counter. What tank is the counter to this? What tech tree tank is most like this? And I was racking my brain. It's not the French autoloader because it's really not the same gun, not the same playstyle. It's the Charioteer. And so when you really think about that and you compare this to the Charioteer, you'll realize just how much better this tank is to the Charioteer. The Charioteer is a single shot, and it doesn't have premium penetrating rounds. It has Hesh. It does have a 360 turret, but that's about it. They go about the same speed. They have about the same camouflage. They're both used about the same way. It's just this tank here has 2 guns, which makes it crazy good, crazy OP, and you're hitting tier 8s, you're hitting tier 6s, you're hitting tier 10s for 800 damage when you double tap. And then your DPM, your camouflage, your decent mobility, all of it wrapped up. This feels like a better tier for tier Turan. I kid you not. 800 damage at tier 8 with this camouflage, this penetration, this accuracy. It's disgusting. No other tank does it just like this. At number 2, we have the T-44-100. I'm just kidding. It's the Shinjitsu, but I don't have the Shinjitsu, so instead I am sharing with you a T-34 or T-44-100 in the background as we talk about the Shinjitsu. The Shinjitsu is basically an unbuffed T-54. The T-54 back in the day had 201mm of standard pen, 330 heat pen, derpier gun, less reload, and that is basically what the Shinjitsu is. They brought it and put it at tier 8. Yeah, a tier 9 tank at tier 8. And they've given it a flamethrower. And what makes Russian medium tanks so good is their ability to brawl. They're some of the best tanks for brawling in the game. As soon as you get close, it's basically done for any tank you could possibly be fighting. And the same tier tech tree equivalent for the Shinjitsu has to be the T-44. That's a weak comparison. It's over for them. Then you give it a flamethrower, basically cutting DPM in half for the enemy by setting them on fire, and you are unstoppable. And it's tier 9, but it's at tier 8. It's so good, so toxic, that it's been banned from many tier 8 competitive leagues. And when they reintroduced the tank unskinned here on console, they made it a tier 9. Yes, the tank is so good that when they re-released it without a skin, they made it a tier 9. Yeah, and that tells you how good it is. It's disgusting. And it's one of the tanks that I pay attention to if it's on the enemy team. There are, well, basically three tanks, 3 or 4 tanks in particular that I pay attention to, make sure they're not on the enemy team. It is the Shinjitsu, it is the S-fak, and Number 3 on the list, ELC Even 90 or Vanguard. Those are the 3 tanks I look out for, and some of you are like, what, the Vanguard? It's not even that good. Why is it in the toxic list? I'm not talking about OP tanks, I'm talking about toxic tanks, and the ELC Even 90 / Vanguard is one of those. And the reason for that is because of its very small size, its crazy good camouflage, and its decent view range. And if you put a good player in one of these, you're gonna get outspotted by them. In fact, even if you don't have a good player, and that's what makes it obnoxious, is it's gonna outspot you because of its camouflage. You put your team at a disadvantage playing a light tank that isn't the Vanguard. In fact, I look out for these when I'm playing in my tier 10 light tanks, because it's sneakier than the tier 10 lights. Therefore, it's a better effective scout at tier 10 than other tier 10 light tanks. The ELC Even 90, watch this. Through bushes, through trees, we spot this Iron Rain, and he doesn't see us. That's how crazy this tank can be. And that's why I've added it to this list, because 90% of the time when there's a light tank on your team and you're playing at tier 8, it is going, or in the enemy team, it is going to be a Vanguard or an ELC Even 90. It's the most played light tank in the game, and that's just one skin variant. And when you combine them, this tank is played so much, it's ridiculous. And so I have decided to add this to the toxic list strictly because of its insane capability to scout and your hindrance when you are not playing one yourself and you have to go up against one, because on any open map it's going to outspot you. Of course, now you're talking about, okay, what about closed maps? How is it going to perform on closed maps? Well, it's a little bit more difficult, but you saw us fighting that AMX M4 up top. We were able to just get to his side, and there's nothing he could do about it, and that is what you can do in your ELCs on your smaller maps. Of course, they're less obnoxious to fight against on smaller maps, yes. But I wanted to include it anyway because most maps are huge. It is a pain to play slow tanks these days because most maps are big and open, and it's a light tank / tank destroyers game these days. And so if you're not playing your light tanks, you're not playing your tank destroyers, you're probably doing it wrong. And the tech tree equivalent to the Vanguard is the Batchat 12-ton, which pales in comparison. Number 4 is one that's a bit more difficult to play, the Barasque. But if you learn how to play it, it is the most powerful, well, it used to be the most powerful tier 8 in the game. Now you have things like the Grom and the S-fak. The S-fak might be a little bit more powerful. And the reason the Barasque is so good at tier 8 is because it can play the role of a light tank. In fact, it can outspot many light tanks, out-camo many light tanks at the same tier. Many of the tech tree light tanks don't hold a candle to this one. In fact, what is the counterpart to the Barasque? What tank is kind of an equivalent to this in the tech tree? The T69? No, not the T69. Maybe the AMX 5100? Oh, no, I don't think the AMX 5100. The Progetto at tier 8? No, not the Progetto. So then what is the tech tree equivalent to this one? There really isn't. Maybe the Batchat 12-ton? Just like the Vanguard? Probably, that's the closest thing, but this thing just packs a bigger punch, has more health, has more penetration on its premium rounds, has a quicker burst damage of 720. There's no reason to play anything else. Why play a light tank other than the Vanguard when you can just play a medium tank that also hits hard at tier 10? 720 alpha damage in 2 seconds if you hit both shots. Absolutely crazy. This already dead. Just kidding, we missed the last shot. We're unable to kill him. But this tank racks up damage quickly. It may have one of the lowest DPMs for its tier, just like the Vanguard, but because of the way the tank is set up to play, it does not matter because you're doing quick ambush shots anyway. And when you're not doing that, you're out spotting the enemy. You're racking up assists. We're up to 2,200 assist damage. So easy. It's not even fair when you put a good player behind the wheel of a Barasque. It is so good and so influential in your games. Absolutely crazy what the Barasque can do. Let's drop 2 tiers. Tier 6. And take a look at the tank that's putting out tier 10 results consistently at tier 6. The Hellcat 105. The obvious tech tree equivalent to this is the Hellcat. The Hellcat is a very strong tank already, and very comparable, actually, because of the camouflage, because of the gun. This gun hits a lot harder. And that's why it's so good. The Hellcat is already one of the best tier 6s in the game, if not the best tech tree tier 6 in the game, in my humblest opinion. You're putting out huge damage numbers. You have 243 millimeters of premium APCR penetration. Why make that tank better? Money. Here's the Hellcat 105 with 330 alpha damage on its heat shells, 360, something like that. Your heat shells also have more penetration than your AP rounds, and they have more alpha damage, and you're reloading every 6 seconds. The amount of damage is crazy to the point where I'm willing to trade. Like this, sure, take 331, I'll take 240 from you. No problem for me. Well, 248, he rolled a bit high, but it's okay. And guess what? I beat his reload. He's dead. Just like that. The Hellcat 105 racks up so much damage so quickly for its tier. And I said 6 seconds reload. It's not 7.1. It's unbelievable. Thank you, G-Man Wrecker, also who I'm platoon with, a longtime subscriber on the channel, for helping me put this video together as we played our tanks, our toxic tanks, to get the footage for you. But the Hellcat 105 is one of those tanks where when I see it play well, I don't care. You don't get my respect, and I don't think much. It's like, okay, yeah, well, you are in a Hellcat 105. What did you expect? That's the Hellcat 105. When you have a player in this and they know what they're doing, it's consistently on top. And you could say that about any tank. Any tank played by a good player is consistently on top. Yeah, but if you pull out your T-3485 and you have a fantastic game and you score top, you're doing 1900 damage. Like, look at that, I'm score top every game in my T-3485. I did 1900. Look, I just did 2200. Oh, I did 1500 damage. This thing's like, oh, that's it? That's all the damage you did? Then you're probably pretty bad, because I just did 4000. I just did 5000. People sent me their replays doing 7000 damage in this tank. 7,000. And to put that into perspective, each tier down, so if you go to tier 10, 10,000 equivalent for tier 10 is 10,000 damage. For tier 9, it's about 9,000. For tier 8, it's 8,000. Tier 7, it's 7,000. For tier 6, it's 6,000. If you're doing 7,000 in this, then that's close to almost 12,000 damage at tier 10. That's about the equivalent. Is 12,000 damage. That's what this tank does. It's a Tehran. It's sneakier than the Tehran, because not only do you have more camouflage, people have less view range. You are sneakier, you're better, you're quicker than the Tehran, and it's at tier 6. So you have the S-fak, which is a Tehran at tier 8. You have a Tehran, which is a Tehran at tier 10, and you have the Hellcat 105, which is, well, a Tehran at tier 6. And so I've included this one in the list. I think it's toxic. It's no good for the poor tier 6s. You imagine grinding up your tiers, playing in your Churchill, and just fighting one of these? It's not fun. And this is where I'm drawing out this video, this clip, because I want you to see the next shot, because it's what the Hellcat does with its heat shells versus Russian mediums. Kadoosh! Ammo rack, 541 damage to him. We're up to 4,400 damage. We did 5,000 damage this game. Unbelievable. Jumping into what's virtually the same tank, at least play style, the Panzerjagger. They've taken a Cold War tank, and Cold War tanks Era 1 are basically tier 9s, tier 10s, if you were to play them here in World War II, and they've put it at tier 8. You have the same gun, same penetration, same alpha damage. What are you doing? Why are you putting this tank in World War II? And now, players do not play this tank very well. I say that, and yet they do. Bad players do not play this tank very well. It's low alpha damage. You have to understand camouflage. You have to understand bush mechanics. You have to understand all these different things. But if you throw on camouflage on this tank, you throw on view range on this tank, you throw on a gun rammer, you are cooking. 280 alpha damage, 267 millimeters of APCR standard penetration, 320 millimeters of heat penetration. You are sending shells out every 4 seconds. Your mobility, your DPM, your gun handling, ignore that shot, your gun handling, everything about this tank is top tier except for its health and except for its armor, but that's because you're a sneaky tank destroyer. but you could play like a medium. You can play like a light tank. In fact, if you don't have a light tank on your team, you can just pick up that role. We do have a light tank on our team, but I have picked up that role in my Panzerjagger here. And this is a tank that's consistently doing well among good players. And I mean exceedingly well. 6,000, 7,000 damage, 8,000 damage I've seen in this thing. It can do it. And the tech tree equivalent, just like the S-fak, I would have to argue, is probably the Charioteer. Again, same playstyle, same kind of functionality, same kind of camouflage, 10 degrees of gun depression. The Charioteer has a better penetration and alpha damage, but it has worse DPM, and it has worse gun handling. And it's only 1 millimeter more penetration, 268, while this one is 267. And it's okay to lose that alpha damage. 7420 here, you have 280, and it just puts out shell, puts out shell, puts out shell, and you have premium heat rounds instead of Hesh rounds, so you can go through even mouses, type 5s. Anything you want, you can penetrate with this tank. It does it all. And I do not like fighting against good players in these things, because they carry, and you can't keep up with them. You can't catch them. They're going to poke you from anywhere they want at any point, because it's mobile. It's nimble, it's quick, and it's DPM, it's gun, everything about it screams tier 9, screams even tier 10. If they put this at tier 10, give it a bit more penetration and a bit more health, I would play it. I would play it at tier 10. I think it does fine. Imagine this thing with like 276 pen, 276 pen, and a bit better gun handling, so it's a bit more snappier. Don't change the DPM, don't change the alpha damage. Give it more health. Oh my goodness, I would play this at tier 10. I think it would be phenomenal tank. 4-second reload, even a 3.5-second reload. You know, whatever you decide to do with it. And this tank would be absolutely king. Oh my goodness. The Panzerjagger, not played too well among the bad players because of the low alpha, but as soon as you give it to a good player, it's disgusting. Last but not least, a tank I debated throwing on this list until I compared it to its tech tree counterpart. We're talking about the Grom, and its counterpart has to be the ISU-152 Russian tank destroyer. The ISU-152 and this tank both have 260 standard pen and 290 premium pen. They both share those penetrations. But what this tank has over that is mobility. It's a bit more mobile, only by a couple degrees. And it has more armor on the hull, and it has more camouflage, and it has more shell velocity, APCR as its standard with over 1400 shell velocity, and it has armor. The armor on this tank should not work as well as it does, but it does. If you can't shoot the lower plate, you're bouncing off this, even if you are a tier 10. If this thing is using gun depression on you, you can't pen it, and it's insane what this tank can actually do. And this game is a testament to that. We're up to 2,500 damage, and we're nowhere near done this game. We just put out shot after shot after shot after shot in this game. We move around the battlefield. We pick up some crazy alpha rolls. 700 alpha. The ISU has 750. That's the only thing the ISU has over this tank. And the fact that the ISU shoots AP as standard, because that has benefits of its own. If you're shooting AP, you have 5 degrees normalization. This is APCR, meaning we only have 2 degrees, but our shells get there faster. And we have a 162 caliber gun, not 152. We're overmatching more targets than the ISU is. Oh my goodness, it's so insane. If we hit an 80mm plate, we get double the normalization. We get a partial overmatch. The ISU doesn't get that if it hits an 80mm plate. It has to hit a 75mm plate. And there's plenty of 80mm plates. A lot of the side armor in Germany are 80mm. I believe the Tiger 2 is 80mm. The Tiger 1 is 80mm. Some of the mediums, like the E50M and E50, 80mm. You get a partial overmatch against those tanks with this gun. Yeah. Unstinking believable. And unlike many of the other tanks in this list, a bad player can pick this up and have a great game because of the alpha damage. You don't need to be as tactical. And we bounce that one. You don't need to be as tactical with this tank as you do in the Panzerjagger, as you do in the Barasque, as you do in the S-fak. I say the S-fak. No, the S-fak hits harder than this thing does. Can you believe that? It hits harder than this thing does. Sounds. What a crazy tank. What a crazy world we live in. What a crazy World of Tanks atmosphere. And the last point I want to make on this tank before we wrap this up is the fact that on PC, this tank has 800 alpha. Here on console, we have 700 alpha damage. And you're like, oh, it's better on PC. No, the closer you are to your targets on PC, the more damage it does. You can roll as low as like 240 if you're at 500 meters. So you have to be close to get the alpha. On here, they couldn't figure that mechanic out, just like they couldn't figure out the double barrels. And so they just gave it a flat 700, and they reduced the reload by 1 second. You are reloading quicker here on console than you're on PC, and you only lose 100 alpha damage, and you can shoot from any range you want. And you get that alpha. Yeah, the Grom here on console, I consider it to be a toxic tank. One that the game would probably be better if it did not exist, or at least does not have the features it has now. But that is going to be it. That is my 7 toxic tank list right now. I was going to include the 5.4, but the 5.4 is not that good anymore because all the tier 5s got health buffs, and that one did not. It actually has less health than most of the tier 5s now these days, and the gun is not very good. The 5.4 has seen better days, and so I did not include that. But it can still be a nightmare, so I will give that an honorable mention, but it does not make this list. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, slap that like button, comment, and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll be seeing you all later. Take care, everyone, and peace out.